Hi guys, my name is Mihai Strompal, and in this video we're going to talk about the Canon 6D Mark II, who is this for, and whether it's still relevant or not in 2021. This review is long overdue, but it's probably for the best. As I've had this camera for over a year now, I am able to share my full experience with you. Let's quickly list the key features for this beauty. 26.2 megapixels full frame CMOS sensor with dual pixel AF, 45 points all cross type AF system, 4K time lapse with built-in intervalometer, Full HD 60 FPS video, in-camera digital image stabilization, 3-inch fully articulated touchscreen display. The maximum ISO is 40,000, but it's also expandable to 102K. 6.5 frames per second burst rate even with RAW files. Built-in GPS, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, NFC, and weather sealing, dust and weather resistance at least. The 6D Mark II has Canon written all over it, with a great build quality, tough, rugged body, and water and dust resistance. If you are a Canon user, this will feel very familiar, and that's not a bad thing at all. It is in many ways a baby 5D Mark IV. It feels really good in hand, and the grip is solid, even if it's probably the most compact full-frame DSLR. But do you know where it's even better than a 5D Mark IV? The battery. The battery lasts for days on this thing. The LPE6 battery has an estimate of 1200 shots by Canon per charge. I often find that you can get even more. And if you're going on a week-long vacation, you might not even need your charger. What mirrorless camera can claim that? And you'll be happy to note that you can access both the battery and the SD card while the camera is on a tripod. This is sometimes a problem on smaller cameras where you have to first take it off the tripod to access them. Also, the buttons are well placed, there is no fiddling around, the menu is great and intuitive, and on top of all that, it's got a rather good fully articulated touchscreen display. Which kind of brings me to my next topic, autofocus. With that tilty flippy screen, you can basically use this camera as a mirrorless or a smartphone. In live view mode, you can touch to focus anywhere in the frame or touch to focus and take a photo, whichever you choose. And it works great, it's very snappy and accurate, and for video, smooth and cinematic at the same time, thanks to Canon's dual pixel autofocus technology, which is still probably the best one on the market. Now keep in mind that for instant focus, older USM lenses are great but loud. But for video and that smooth, delicious Canon dual pixel autofocus, I would recommend the STM lenses. Anyway, you have to remember that this way of using a DSLR didn't used to be a thing at all. So this kind of a hybrid approach for Canon's autofocus is working pretty well. Now, as far as the more traditional way of focusing with the DSLR goes, the 6D Mark II has 45 cross-type AF points, which is a vast improvement over the first one, which had 11, I think. However, it was a bit of a disappointment for some to see that all 45 points are crammed in the middle of the frame, because this has the same AF system that the 80D has, which is a crop sensor camera. So when you take the AF system of a crop sensor camera and put it on a full frame, now all of a sudden you have a lot more in frame, which is not covered by an AF point. Now again, this is not the end of the world for anyone, especially not for me. It's just one of those things where it becomes apparent where Canon cut some corners in order to offer their most affordable full-frame DSLR. And to be honest, most of the times, at least for me, how I use the camera is with single point focus or spot focus. I would half press the shutter button and then recompose. So this is a total non-issue for me. Now, since the 6D Mark II has a burst rate of 6.5 frames per second, It can be used for some sport or action photography, but I wouldn't really recommend it for that exclusively. Where I think the 6D shines though is the fact that it opens many doors and possibilities in different areas of photography. It's versatile, especially since it has a full frame sensor. This is absolutely perfect for portrait photography, product photography, so wedding photographers too, although maybe as a backup camera for them, since this only has one SD card slot, UHS 1, and pretty much all professionals prefer to have two slots, one as a backup in case of one of them failing, so they have redundancy, and so that you don't have to go to your client and tell him that you don't have any photos of his wedding. Yeah, that'd be awkward. Other than that, this 26 megapixel sensor, which is, I think, a great sweet spot for resolution before the files become way too big and difficult to handle, has great low light performance too. I have tested it in many situations like that. However, a pain point of this camera is dynamic range. So what is dynamic range and should we even care about it? Well, simply put, dynamic range is a camera's capability to capture details both in the highlights, for example, these clouds in the sky right here, and the shadows, which are the darkest parts. So essentially, the better the dynamic range, which you will hear like high dynamic range, the more details a camera can capture in both the brightest parts of an image and the darkest parts of image. And this is especially true and helpful if you want to edit your images, for example, in Lightroom. But as I was saying, the Canon 6D Mark II isn't such a great performer in high dynamic range. So let's see how an image looks at first. This is how it would look if you would expose for the main subjects, which would be the houses and church in this case, which you will most often than not do. You will lose all the sky. There's almost no clouds left. So let me try to recover some of those skies, and this is pretty much it. I mean, I can try to do some more if I decrease the exposure, but I will start to lose other parts of the image. And besides that, most of it is not recoverable. For example, you can use a tool in Lightroom, which is the highlight clipping tool, and these red areas that you see are completely burned. There's no detail left right there. It's just the sensor captured almost pure white, so there's nothing to change there. It doesn't know what information it should be there. So how can you bypass this issue? Well, it's called exposure bracketing, which is exactly what I've done here. And the Canon even has this function built in which you choose how many pictures you want to take, at least 2, but usually 3, with different exposure values. So for example, this one was exposed for the houses. This one was exposed for the sky. As you can see, it's a pretty much perfect sky, but then we can barely see the houses. And this one is like the middle child of the two. And when you combine them all, and well, after some editing, this is what you get. And this is called a high dynamic range photo, HDR for short. So I think landscape photographers will be the most affected by this, but at the same time, landscape photographers will also be very likely to have a tripod with them and to know about this technique and do some exposure bracketing anyway, so it's not really a problem after all. If there's one thing that Canon cameras are known for, it's gotta be Canon color science, which is nice indeed. But I think this mostly applies to JPEG images and videos. If you shoot mostly in RAW and then you will edit your photos in Lightroom, for example, anyway, I don't imagine it being such a great deal. Like I said, 26 megapixels seem to me more than enough, and a good balance between not enough resolution and way too big of a file size, giving you the capacity to crop in quite a bit. Low light capabilities are definitely there. I even managed to play with a bit of astrophotography. This camera produces beautiful results, there's no doubt. It can easily be used in a professional environment. However, you should keep in mind what I mentioned earlier, and that is the dynamic range, which is rather limited on this sensor. Even if this camera has a fully articulated screen, which makes it great for video and especially vlogging, it has an amazing autofocus. The video recording on this is pretty limited. It only has 1080p at 60 FPS max, and the lack of a 4K recording, even at its launch, left many people scratching their heads. I should mention there is a 4K capability on this, and that is the 4K time-lapse. And honestly, this looks like a deliberate action. It's a pretty sad example of Canon crippling their own cameras in order to not cannibalize their more expensive ones. Which is, you know, unfortunate for the end consumer. Canon will come and say that this camera is made with photography in mind and video is just an extra feature on the side. And while that may be true, cameras completely capable of doing both great have been available and around for years now. And that's not a good enough excuse anymore. Okay, enough talking about it. Let's see how the video quality really looks like. Good morning everyone, and fantastic to see you all. We've made it. We've survived 2020. You should pat yourself on the shoulder. It was no small task, to be honest. But we are here today to review and show the video capabilities of the Canon 6D Mark II. Or rather, I should say its limitations, because as I've told you, this is only Full HD and not the good kind of Full HD, as you will see. And I think this is the perfect place to demonstrate that to you. So let's take a look. Alright, so we're going to do a couple of tests. This is without any kind of stabilization because the sensor itself in the body doesn't have one, and I've turned off the lens stabilization as well. So this is kind of a vlog test. If you would be interested in using this camera as a vlog camera, this is the worst scenario because there's no stabilization whatsoever, and I'm just walking and probably I'm wobbling all over. Now this is with the optical IS from the lens activated. You should maybe see an improvement. I don't know if a huge one, but still an improvement nonetheless. Now I have activated the digital image stabilizer that this camera has, and the thing about it is it's probably a bit better. I don't know, you tell me. But it also crops in a bit, ever so slightly in the image, so you have less, you don't even have Full HD anymore. And then there's the enhanced digital image stabilizer mode, which crops in quite a bit. I'm looking at myself now, and it's just head in the frame. But yeah, the image should be a bit smoother. Although I imagine for most scenarios, the optical image stabilizer from the lens should be enough. Alright, not everyone's favorite subject is themselves. Let's see some image quality and do some pixel peeping, shall we? Now, despite having a very robust and reliable autofocus system, the dual pixel AF from Canon, which I keep praising, the image quality is a bit underwhelming. Even for 1080p, it looks a bit soft and mushy, it lacks details. I suspect this is because it only records in IPB, a rather highly compressed codec, and on top of all that, the bitrate is rather low. And this is actually why I brought you here, because you can really see those details missing in all the foliage, branches, tree bark. If you're just vlogging, then it's fine, you wouldn't want it to show someone's skin imperfections anyway. Just for comparison purposes, let's take a look side by side at the Canon footage and how the 4K recording from a modern smartphone, the Galaxy S10 in this case, looks like. This is obviously not an apples to apples comparison. One's a full frame DSLR filming in Full HD and the other is a smartphone filming in 4K. But at the end of the day, I think what's more important is that you get the results that you want and not which tool you got it with. There are some vast differences between the two, with the S10 having way more details to the point which it might actually be a bit over-sharpened, but it really depends what you're looking for. And there are inherently advantages of having a big sensor camera like low light performance, manual focus, depth of field, just to name a few, with which you can really play with and take advantage of, and even achieve some incredible separation of your subject from your background, for example. So, who is this camera for? Well, I think the best candidate for this camera would be someone wanting to move on from a crop sensor camera to a full frame, maybe for more bokeh for portraits, better low light performance, or maybe to have access to Canon's vast and very good lineup of EF mount lenses, which vary from cheap to really expensive pro lenses. This would be a great option for a beginner as well, I reckon, if you have the budget. It will take quite a while before you outgrow this camera. And for the average shooter, I really recommend it with the Canon 24-105mm STM zoom lens. It's a great performer for the price and offers you such a wide range from wide to telephoto. However, this can be a powerful tool in the hands of a pro as well. It can definitely deliver amazing results and you can at least have it as a backup if not your main camera. Whoever you might be, and no matter if you're a beginner or a pro, it should be clear by now that this is a photography first camera. And while you can do some video, I really wouldn't recommend it if you have video in mind first. So let's draw some conclusions, shall we? For pros, we have the fact that it's a full frame sensor, it has dual pixel AF, Canon color science, 3-inch vari-angle touchscreen, robust body, impressive battery life, 6.5 FPS burst shooting, anti-flicker technology, access to EF Canon lenses, weather resistance, GPS, NFC, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth. And as far as cons go, I think the main one has to be the fact that it only shoots video in 1080p 60 FPS max, and even that is rather soft. Low dynamic range, only one SD UHS 1 slot, AF points are all in the center, expensive for what it offers, and rather old tech. Now, it's a great camera, don't get me wrong, but I think the main issue with it is when it was launched, Canon seems to have not taken into consideration how much mirrorless cameras have evolved over the past few years. And compared to many of them, this camera just isn't convincing enough anymore, at least at the initial price of $1,900. Now it's discounted and you can probably find it at around $1,300. That being said, if you can find it on a discount or even used but in good condition, I would still recommend cautious in that regards, because you know, there are many kinds of people out there. I can assure you this is a great camera if you buy it for the right reasons. If video is not that important to you, or at least the lack of a 4K recording, then it's great, it's the perfect camera. But for me, that's precisely the point which kind of makes me consider to move to a hybrid system, which is capable of taking both great photos and great videos. Now hold on a moment. Don't leave just yet. Hit me up in the comments below and tell me what is the most important thing for you in a camera, and also what is your current favorite camera. That's been it, guys. I hope it wasn't too long and boring for you, and I also hope that I helped at least one person. That's all my ambition. Otherwise, thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to hit those like and subscribe buttons, and I have quite a few ideas in mind for next videos, so don't hesitate to do that. and I'll catch you guys in the next one. See ya!